Welcome to another episode of People Pod. Today we're doing a deep dive into, well, imagine being an 11-year-old kid.
Okay.
You walk into your primary school, you're nervous but excited to audition for the school choir. You open your mouth to sing and the teacher just stops you.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they look at you and flat out tell you that you cannot sing. Not like you need practice, but just a definitive, crushing rejection.
That is brutal for an 11-year-old.
Right. Now, fast forward to today, the summer of 2026. You're headlining Glastonbury. You just threw a reported £1.3 million wedding in Sicily. You are actively suing the tech giant Samsung for $15 million. And you have literally billions of streams to your name.
It's an unbelievable pivot.
It really is. So our mission today for this deep dive isn't just to list off dance pop anthems. We want to understand the architecture of the woman who bridged that impossible gap from a rejected choir kid to a global mogul Dua Lipa.
Yeah, and it's a phenomenal trajectory, really. When we synthesize this stack of sources on her life, what emerges is not, the story of some perfectly engineered, PR-trained pop entity.
Right.
We're looking at a case study in relentless hustle, a fiercely guarded dual identity, and the mechanics of what happens when an artist refuses the industry command to simply shut up and sing.
Yeah, it's like looking at a swan gliding across a lake. I mean, we see the flawless red carpet looks and we hear the perfect disco pop, but underneath the water, she has been paddling fiercely since she was a teenager.
Exactly.
So let's examine that foundation. Where does this specific drive originate?
Well, we really have to start with her parents, Anesa and Dukajin Lipa. Dua was born in London in 1995, but her parents are Kosovo Albanians who actually fled the conflict in Pristina.
Right, because of the war.
Yeah. For context, in the early 1990s, the former Yugoslavia was fracturing, and that led to severe political oppression and eventually a really brutal war in Kosovo. Her parents basically left everything behind to start over in the UK.
Yeah.
So from the moment she was born, there was this inherited narrative of displacement, resilience, and just having to rebuild from scratch.
And a heavy musical legacy, too, right? Because her father wasn't just like casually playing guitar in the living room.
Not at all.
He was the lead singer of a Kosovan rock band called Oda. So she grew up saturated in his music alongside, David Bowie, Bob Dylan, Radiohead, and Sting.
Yeah, music was just in her blood. But the first major turning point we see in the sources is in 2008. Kosovo declares independence, and the family decides to move back to Pristina. Dua is 13 at this point.
Which is such a pivotal age.
Totally. And moving to a post-conflict nation at 13 is a massive culture shock. She goes to school there, deeply immerses herself in the Albanian language, and starts seriously considering a music career.
But there's a roadblock, right?
Yeah. She quickly realizes a harsh logistical truth. Pristina, as much as she loved it, it just didn't possess the global music industry infrastructure she needed. There were no major record labels or massive talent agencies.
Right. It's not exactly London or LA.
Exactly. So at age 15, she makes an astonishing decision. She moves back to London, alone.
Okay, I have to push back on that because looking at this objectively, how does a 15-year-old legally or logistically just move to London? That sounds almost like a romanticized PR myth.
It sounds like fiction, I know, but it was a calculated grind. She moved into a flat with an older family friend who acted as her guardian.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah. She enrolled in school, but outside of those hours, she was just hustling. She worked as a cocktail waitress. She started recording covers of artists like Alicia Keys and Christina Aguilera, and she was uploading them to YouTube and SoundCloud.
Just trying to get noticed anywhere.
Pretty much. She even modeled for Topshop and booked a 2013 ITV commercial for The X Factor, where she sang a Sister Sledge cover.
So she was essentially engineering her own omnipresence, like just putting herself anywhere a camera or microphone existed.
Exactly. And that strategy actually worked because a lawyer saw her potential and introduced her to management, which eventually led to her 2014 signing with Warner Bros.
But reading into the business mechanics of that deal in the sources, it wasn't just about her voice, was it? It was actually a matter of market economics. Warner Bros. Didn't just love her tone. They had a spreadsheet problem.
That is a really crucial insight. In 2014, if you look at the pop landscape, artists like Katy Perry, Taylor Swift, and Rihanna were completely dominating.
Right, they were everywhere.
Yeah. And Warner Bros. Looked at their own roster and realized they had a massive demographic hole. They lacked a marquee global female pop star. Her management knew this. They leveraged her raw talent against the label's corporate desperation.
Oh, that's smart.
Very.
Yeah.
She wasn't just another name thrown at the wall to see if it would stick. She was the exact puzzle piece the label absolutely needed to compete. So they poured their full focus and resources into her from day one.
And that corporate backing, combined with her drive, pushed her right up the ladder. We get singles in 2015 and 2016, and then the 2017 self-titled debut album gives us New Rule.
A massive track.
Huge. That song made her the first female solo artist to hit #1 in the UK since Adele did it in 2015. The video has over 3 billion views. She is sitting on top of the world. But hypervisibility always attracts the internet's microscope. And in 2018, she hits a brutal wall at the Brit Awards.
Yay, the infamous meme. She performed at the awards, and a user commented on the YouTube video of her performance, quote, "I love her lack of energy. Go girl, give us nothing."
Ouch.
Yeah, and that phrase went viral globally.
I mean, to give nothing in pop music is the ultimate insult. It implies you lack the polish, the choreography, the stage presence of a Beyoncé or a Britney Spears.
Exactly.
For a new artist whose entire brand was built on this cool, dark pop persona, having millions of people mock your dancing could have been completely destructive. I mean, the instinct for most people would be to retreat.
Or to blame the choreographer, or, blame the nerves. But instead, she took that harsh viral humiliation and internalized it as fuel. She later credited that specific internet criticism as the primary motivation to overhaul herself entirely.
So she just got to work.
Yeah, she spent months in grueling dance rehearsals, putting in the physical labor to become an undeniable stage performer. She weaponized the criticism.
Which means she essentially treated internet trolls like free consulting.
Yeah.
She took their feedback and built her masterpiece era, which brings us to future nostalgia. This is such a fascinating study in timing and paradox. It's early 2020. She has crafted this immaculate, upbeat disco revival album designed for crowded clubs and sweaty dance floors, and it is released on March 27, 2020.
Literally days after the entire world locked down for the COVID-19 pandemic.
Right.
The clubs were padlocked, social gatherings were illegal, the physical infrastructure of the music industry, record stores, promotional tours, live shows, it all completely evaporated overnight.
And yet it became the defining soundtrack of the era. She became the protagonist of the 2020 disco revival while everyone was sitting in sweatpants in their living rooms.
It was bizarre, but it worked.
But I need you to explain the math on a specific chart anomaly from the data we're looking at. In May 2020, Future Nostalgia hit #1 on the UK albums chart, but it holds the 21st century record for the lowest one-week sales while at the top of the chart.
Right.
It sold only 7,317 copies that week. I mean, selling 7,000 albums does not sound like a global triumph. How did that happen?
Yeah, to understand that anomaly, we have to look at the mechanics of music charting during the pandemic. The official charts company calculates an album's position by combining physical sales, so CDs and vinyl, with streaming equivalents.
Okay.
Because high street retailers like HMV were forcibly shuttered by the lockdown, physical sales across the entire industry flatlined to historic lows. So those 7,317 physical sales were actually a massive share of an artificially shrunken retail market.
Ah, I see.
But concurrently, her streaming numbers were astronomical. Tracks like Don't Start Now and Levitating were saturating TikTok and Spotify. I mean, Levitating actually went on to top the Billboard year-end Hot 100 chart for 2021 and achieved a diamond certification in the U.S.
She provided the escapism people desperately needed. And she parlayed that momentum into her 2024 album Radical Optimism and expanded into Hollywood with the Barty movie and Argyle. But underneath all the glitz, she made a really ruthless business move in late 2023. She bought back her master recordings and publishing rights from her former management company.
Yes.
Walk us through the mechanics of this, because the term masters gets thrown around a lot, but what does that actually mean for her bank account?
Well, in the traditional record label ecosystem, an artist signs a contract where the label fronts the massive costs of recording, marketing, and distribution.
Right, the label takes the risk.
Exactly. In exchange, the label owns the master, which is the actual final sound recording of the song in perpetuity. The artist gets a small royalty percentage, but the label controls how the song is used and takes the lion's share of the revenue. By buying back her masters and publishing rights, Lipa inverted that dynamic.
She moved from being an employee of the music industry to being the boss. She now controls the licensing. So if a movie or a commercial wants to use New Rules, they pay her directly, on her terms.
Precisely. It is the ultimate flex of industry power and a massive wealth-generating mechanism. But this level of corporate power introduces a really fascinating tension when we look at her public persona.
This is where the story gets incredibly complex. Because we have this mainstream, corporate-friendly pop star. She's the face of Yves Saint Laurent, Porsche, Puma, and Evian. Yet she aggressively uses her platform to weigh in on some of the most volatile geopolitical conflicts on Earth.
Does it hold back?
No, she doesn't. And just to be super clear for you listening, our goal today isn't to take a stance on these political issues. We are impartially looking at the source material to understand how her activism functions within her global brand.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Let's examine the controversy from July 2020. She tweeted an image of a banner showing an irredentist map of Greater Albania. This map depicted parts of Albania, Kosovo, Serbia, Greece, and North Macedonia as a single nation. And across the top was the word autochthonous.
Okay, we need an ELI 5 on why this triggered such an immediate, massive geopolitical backlash.
Yeah, to understand this, we have to look at the history of the Balkans. The word autochthonous essentially means indigenous originating where found, rather than descended from migrants. When Yugoslavia broke apart in the 1990s, it triggered brutal, traumatic ethnic conflicts over borders and territory.
So it's a very sensitive topic.
Very. Promoting a map of Greater Albania touches an incredibly raw nerve. She was fiercely accused by social media users and commentators of promoting ethnic nationalism and fascism, given the extreme historical associations of that specific map.
And she did step in to clarify later, stating her post was misinterpreted. She said she completely rejects ethnic separatism and just wanted to express pride in her Kosovan Albanian heritage. But it proves how deeply tied she is to that region's fraught history, even when the blowback is severe.
Definitely.
And she hasn't avoided other highly charged global conflicts.
No, take her stances on the Israel-Palestine conflict. The sources detail how she has repeatedly shared posts criticizing the Israel Defense Forces' treatment of Palestinians. The pushback was institutional. An Israeli organization called Inturtsu organized a petition with thousands of signatures, sending it to the Israeli Minister of Defense and the Minister of Culture.
And what were they demanding?
They were explicitly demanding her songs be banned from Israeli army radio.
Wow. And I find the incident with the New York Times even more revealing. In May 2021, a full-page advertisement was published in the paper accusing her, alongside models Bella and Gigi Hadid, of anti-Semitism based on their advocacy for Palestinians.
Right, a full-page ad.
Yeah. And the traditional PR playbook for a pop star says, ignore it, let the news cycle move on, protect the brand. But she actively took on the paper of record, publicly clapping back at the ad and completely rejecting the characterization. Later, in October 2023, she signed an open letter urging President Biden to push for a ceasefire in Gaza.
She's also openly campaigned against Brexit, backed the UK Labour Party, and publicly dismissed rumors that she would perform at the 2022 Qatar World Cup, specifically calling out the host country for human rights violations.
But surely there is a massive financial risk here. I mean, for decades, the golden rule of celebrity endorsements was the Michael Jordan rule. Republicans buy Snickers, too.
Right, stay neutral.
Yeah, the entire strategy was to remain a blank slate, offend absolutely no one, and collect the checks. Why doesn't this constant political friction kill her deals with Porsche or Evian?
Because that old rule is dead. In the 2020s, particularly for Gen Z consumers, neutrality is actually a brand liability. If a star feels manufactured or heavily censored by their PR team, younger audiences reject them as inauthentic.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Brands like Yves Saint Laurent aren't hiring her in spite of her outspoken politics. They're hiring her because her political friction makes her feel authentic. When she speaks out, it adds a necessary layer of depth to the shimmering disco pop. It signals to the consumer that there is a real, complicated human being operating the machine.
That flips the entire business model on its head. Her activism is a core component of her brand equity. Which brings us to her reality right now, in the summer of 2026. She's navigating a level of wealth and influence that is just hard to comprehend. The Sunday Times Rich List estimated her net worth at £90 million back in 2024, and her portfolio has only aggressively expanded since.
She has evolved into a true lifestyle mogul. She runs a brand called Service 95, which started as a newsletter but grew so influential that in May of 2026, she partnered directly with Google Maps.
Really? Google Maps?
Yeah, she's now curating global city guides, recommending places to eat, sleep, and play in major cities worldwide directly through the Google ecosystem.
From a cocktail waitress grinding in London to literally mapping the world for Google. That's wild. But as her brand expands, she is fiercely protective of how her image is monetized by others. If you're listening to this and wondering why a billionaire pop star cares about TV boxes, consider how much your own digital footprint and personal data is worth to tech companies. Now multiply that value by 1 billion. That is the core of her recent legal battle.
Right. In May 2026, she filed a massive $15 million lawsuit against Samsung. The tech giant allegedly used her image on their television boxes without authorization or a licensing agreement.
Which is a violation of the right of publicity.
Exactly. She understands the immense, calculable value of her face and her name, and she will litigate against one of the largest corporations on Earth to protect that asset.
And as she locks down her business empire, her personal life has become a global spectacle of its own. She started dating British actor Callum Turner in early 2024. They got engaged in the summer of 2025, and then came the weddings. Plural.
Plural, yes. They held a quiet civil ceremony in London in May 2026. But the main event was the second ceremony in June 2026 in the Sicilian town of Bagheria. It was a lavish, 3-day celebration in Palermo that reportedly cost £1.3 million.
And even a wedding couldn't escape the friction that seems to follow her everywhere.
No, the sources highlight that the massive event actually divided the local residents in Sicily. Some locals were incredibly proud and excited to host such a high-profile global event, seeing it as great publicity for the region.
Sure.
But others were highly critical of the sheer disruption it caused to their daily lives, with roads blocked off and massive security perimeters established.
It seems like no matter what she does, whether it's releasing a pop anthem, posting a map on Twitter, or getting married, she exists at the absolute center of a very loud, very public conversation.
Which is the hallmark of a true generational icon. If there's a final thought to pull from all this source material, consider how incredibly rare it is for a modern celebrity to balance these two wildly different worlds. She commands a heavily corporatized, highly lucrative global pop brand. Yet, she remains fiercely rooted in a complicated geopolitical identity. She was granted Albanian citizenship in 2022 and Kosovar citizenship in 2025. She and her father created the Sunny Hill Foundation to actively raise funds for people in Kosovo facing financial difficulties. She refuses to let the pop machine smooth out her edges.
It makes you think back to that 11-year-old girl, the primary school choir teacher who told her she couldn't sing, and the internet trolls years later who looked at her at the Brit Awards and said she gave us nothing. They fundamentally misunderstood what they were looking at.
They completely missed it.
They saw a quiet kid or a green, stiff performer and completely missed the absolute steel underneath. She gives us the pristine disco escapes we crave, but she refuses to disappear into the glitter. She forces the world to see the whole person, the heritage, the hustle, the politics, and the power. Thanks for listening to BL Pod. Keep tuning in for more stories worth knowing.